I know the day after a game, you got to talk about the game. And I want to talk about the game in this podcast, not as specifically as I'm going to do in later today or tomorrow stuff with film. Somebody asked for Paul to get some up close film of him, which I'm going to do among other things. But Tua is on track to beat Brees for highest completion percentage for a season, which would make him an all-time holder of a record. And I don't like to really cover Tua too much because I think a lot of people use him. Either they say he's terrible and then they get their clicks, or they say he's the greatest thing in forever and they get their clicks. I try not to cover Tua too much for that case. I don't want to use the kid. I cover him when I really think it's critical. And this one is going to probably be the last Tua thing I do for a little bit, unless something huge comes out. I mean, I'm going to touch on it, but not really focus. But I try to do things with a reason. I try to think about it before I do it. Not all the time. I got a big mouth. I'm a hot-tempered Irish German. I don't let the New York accents, no Italian in here. My ancestors would roll over in a grave at that thought. But I really try to think about what I'm doing here. And people didn't understand all these years why I kept going back to Chris Greer, why I kept going back to the offensive line. And it is the foundational principles for success. Your GM, and then as a unit, the offensive line. And neither one of them are good enough. But Tua is still on track. And I know there's going to be people saying it's all short throws. He throws too many screens or whatever. So I'm going to do a comparison of Tua this year against Brees in 2018. I'm going to show you some stuff that's really, really clear. And it's going to go back to, I don't think this kid's in the highest level just yet. I've got to see him in the biggest games against the greatest competition and come through. He's had his hands tied behind his backs with this framework, the philosophy, the offensive line, the way we propel our offense. It's good for him in some ways, but not really totally, and definitely not against the best teams. So what we saw yesterday was him carrying his team with a not so hot defense, no running game, and he carried us to the victory, but against a lower class team. But if you took the surrounding talent and raised it, then his play would raise. And so when he faced the better teams in the bigger moments, it wouldn't be so lopsided. The leverage wouldn't be against him. It'd either be equal or above him. So I'm going to get into that today. I'm going to do a Lions franchise comparison to kind of show where Greer's really at. I think it was Doug Lee Durong talked about Ross was smiling ear to ear over the victory yesterday. I don't know. I think the one emotional thing is getting rid of Greer, so I'm thinking maybe he's going to be back. I don't know. We'll see how the rest of the season plays out. But this one is going to be a good one. You're going to see Brees, and Brees is a Hall of Famer. And that was an epic season, but you're going to see some very interesting stuff in this comparison. So before I get into it, people have been telling me, guys, please, if you like the stuff that I'm doing here and you want to support me, please subscribe. Hit the notification bell if you have subscribed. Leave a comment. And they're saying you got to put 7 words so the algo gods are happy and the SEO pushes me so I can keep going and my sponsors are happy. Hit the like button. All that stuff keeps Curtis in the business. These algo gods are voracious and I just got to feed them so my sponsor keeps me because I love to do this stuff. So please help me out with that. Anyway, so right into it. Let's take a look at this image. It's got a lot of colors. It's got a lot of numbers. I'm going to break it down slowly and show some very, very clear stuff. Okay, so Tua is at the top and his color codings, the color codings match the bottom with Brees on the bottom. Obviously this year for Tua, 2018 for Brees when he broke the record. So if you look starting in DB percent, okay, and pressure is right there. You'll see to the left of it, kept clean, under pressure, not blitzed, and when blitzed. Tua has been kept clean 77.5% of the time. Brees, 74.3. Under pressure, Tua 22.5. Brees, 25.7, so it's a 2.8% increase in pressure. And this is going to match out to some other things. And you see something clearly. So we'll skip over not blitzed. When blitzed, Tua's only been blitzed 20% of the time. Brees was blitzed 27. That's 7% more. So he's had 2.7 more percent pressure, but 7 more blitz percentage. So I'm going to stop right here. When a quarterback is blitzed, it's not one thing or other, but what it does is it takes receivers from defenders from coverage and brings them in to blitz. It puts pressure, theoretically, definitely puts a more difficult task for the offensive line. But if the pressure hits home, it's no good for the quarterback. But if it gets picked up or the quarterback gets the ball out right, that weakened secondary is easier to attack. And so blitzing can hurt if the pressure gets in, but if not, it can actually hurt the defense. And so he was blitzed 7% more, but only gave up 2.8% more pressure. Where conversely, Tua, he was blitzed 20%, he gave up 2.5. So it's roughly the same, but what Tua is not seeing, he's not getting the blitzes. So those defensive backfields are a little more stacked than you would think than Brees would be. So it's just a little bit more. It's 7% more stacked. So keep that in your mind. So attempts, 307 for Tua, 567. So he's throwing lots of passes. You can't really extrapolate it out to double or whatever, but it's a general idea. He's in the framework. Completion percentage, 74.5, the purple. That's the next completion percentage. And then 73.7 for Brees. That's what PFF had. Next Gen Stats had it at 74.4. So the reason I put that in there is obviously Next Gen's more accurate. But from PFF's evaluation, they had Tua at 74.5. Were they not in tune like 2018? I don't know. I just put that there. I don't really think any of these things are 100%. There is just a little bit of give and take as far as the numbers. I just probably want to put that there. Yards, 21, 25, 45, 42. He's got basically a little bit over 50% of the attempts, so he's kind of roughly in the yards department. Yards per attempt. So that's after the receiver gets tackled. 7.6 for Tua, 8.4 for Brees. So it's just a little bit, Brees had a little bit more of a deeper attack when it was all said and done than Tua. But if you go look at the other blue little circles there, you'll see that Tua's average depth of target was 6.2, and the average depth of target for Brees was 7.7. Now, that's a big difference. And so it'd be very, very easy to say Tua's just, throwing short, and that's why. And in some ways, it is true, but it's not just the number, it's the why. And so, again, you saw there was a little bit less thinner. There's more thinner defensive back group for Brees than Tua. That adds a little bit of chance to get some bigger plays, but I'm not going to pin it all on that. But just hold on to that for a little bit. You see touchdowns, 15-4 for Tua in the little green circle, and then 36-7 for Brees. Brees, when you extrapolate it out, he's having a more effective touchdown to interception ratio. If you double it a little bit more, Tua would be like 32 and like 9 or 10 or something like that. Brees clearly had a better season for that in that number category. So you can see, but it kind of goes a little bit farther. So you look at big time throws, BTT. It's an orange little oval and turnover worthy plays. They're both grouped together. Tua is 8-8, where Brees was 31-15. And so I'm not here to say he's having as good a season as Brees. Brees was towards the end of his career. This was an epic season. But I just want to focus on the completion percentage and the framework. So the first part of the framework is Tua is seeing more full secondaries than Brees, 7%. Pressure rate is kind of the same. Brees got a little bit more, but the ratio between the blitz and the pressure is about the same. But here's some keys. I'm going to say, I'll just move on to this quick. Drops, DRP, the black circle, 9 and 23. Brees got a few more drops than Tua when you ratio it out, but it'll be pretty close. Bats, though, 6 to 7. And again, if you double that, that means Tua would be around 12. And so he's getting guys that are coming in and collapsing that offensive line in some cases, and the ball's getting deflected. In others, it's not all one thing, but those are usually signs that the offensive line's allowing a little bit compression on their protection. And so you could see a little negative mitigation factor for Tua as well. But you go to defensive pressures, you see 69, you double that, that's 140 and a little bit more. He'd be at about the same ratio as Brees at 152. Sacks, 18, Brees, 21. Again, if you kind of like double that-ish, it would be much higher. Overall times to throw, you can see it's 231 and 248. But the key thing I want to focus on, and that's going to kind of lay all this stuff out with the last little bit of passing concept, he's thrown 77%, which is a little bit more, 3% more than Brees, but at 203. Brees was throwing at 228, 9% longer. The longer the quarterback has to throw the football, the little bit more they can look around, the little bit more they can wait, the little bit more those receivers can get open. Brees, he was blitzed a little bit more. He had more time in his clean throws, and his clean throws were less. So Tua's framework is substantially faster, but he's still getting pretty darn heavy pass rush. He's still seeing lots of pressure and compression. And then when you go to the next factor, it's going to be a give and a take for Tua. And you can kind of do what you want. I'm not here to tell you it's this or that. In one hand, you can see all the way to the right, the little brown, dropbacks, play action, 25% play actions to 18.6. That's 5.2% more play actions. That means there's less receivers going into route, 5%, and more staying in for protection. But Tua is seeing thicker secondaries by 7%. So when you pull it all together in the wide receiver and DB ratio, it's a 12% swing to the negative for Tua. Who is throwing faster and getting more pressure as well. Now to those who may want to say the screens are a big deal, he's throwing screens 7.1% more. And that's going to elevate the completion percentage. No doubt. I mean, those screens are adding 7% to his completion percentage. And so I think clearly Brees was having a better season in 2018. I think some of it is sort of inflated by the screen game. But when you look at the protection, and notably the run attack, they had a healthy Tehran, I think, that year. And I don't know, I got a shot, I can't remember. But they had a much better running attack. They were much more diverse. They got the ball out a little bit later. Teams blitzed them a little bit more because the protection was better. And the time to throw was higher. And so, and there was less play actions, which means you're taxing the secondary. So Brees is having a better season, clearly. Brees, I think, is really, he had a better framework too. But what would Tua do with that kind of framework? Every tenth, I think it was this game or the last game, they talked about every tenth of a second is a big deal. So there's a 2.5, just about 2.5 ticks more that Brees can go. And that's a lot. It's a little bit, it's like a step or so or more for these receivers. And then there's just more protection. And so I think Tua might end up with the all-time record. And I think a lot of that has to do with the screen game. But Tua, in his own token, is playing with way more, on a higher difficulty level than Brees. It's no doubt. And so it's up to you. I mean, whatever comes out, that's the number, and that's going to be the record. But you've got to understand that this offensive line, it blocks, what people think is good because it is so fast. I mean, and we have no interior run game, which defenses, they're not playing us to stop the run. They're just playing pass all day. And so I think the best thing you can get from this is that Tua is doing a lot of work with very little help. Yeah, it helps to have these quick throws in the pockets and the screens and stuff, but overall it caps him in the big games against the big teams, and you could make more with his quick release on blocking longer and legitimate inside run game, so you compress the leverage of the linebackers, you bring those safeties up, and when you run play action, you get legitimate biting on the play action, and he could have more production. But the failings of Chris Grier to assemble the right squad, I mean, I would say both defensive and offensive, and I'll get with that the Lions game, is a huge negative effect on Tua. And I think if he can stay healthy and get somebody here who can build right, his best days are ahead of him. So I hope you kind of follow me along. There's a lot of stuff here. But this is very clear, guys. I think that a lot of people didn't kind of get it 22, maybe a little bit more in 23, and then we kind of used the injuries as a rationale. But then we came back this year, and Grier doubled down, and it is looking very clear that we have a substandard offensive line. The tight end is a key component. Jonnu's nice in the pass game, but not really much else. And our receivers, they're kind of smaller and heavy investment, stripping away kind of everything else. It's the opposite model, mostly, of all the successful teams. So I think Tua's got a bright future if he can stay healthy. I think if you build right, this kid maybe someday gets to rival this kind of season and maybe even more. We'll see. There's a lot from here to there. And obviously health's the biggest thing. But this kid is doing so much with so little. And the so little is about Grier. So, hope you enjoyed. Curtis saying, be well, go Fins, Curtis out. Today, by getting signed up with aceperhead.com service that'll allow you to book action on sports from all around the world.